Hello everyone, and welcome to Mr. This is South America, and that skinny serpentine sliver of land is Chile. Now, let's see what's been going on, shall we? The land of Chile is packed with surprises. From the highest mountains in the Americas to the driest desert in the world, from lush forests to raging volcanoes and frosty southern islands stretching out towards Antarctica. It was this narrow strip of climatic variation shaped like a hockey stick and wedged between the Andes and the ocean that, several millennia ago, became home to tribes such as the Mapuche. Never united into a state, the Mapuche dwelt in scattered familial groups that hunted, fished, waged war, and worshipped spirits, channeled by a class of shaman women known as Machi. The Mapuche were fierce fighters and fended off the Inca from Peru, who were expanding their empire south under Tupac Inca Yupanqui in the 1400s. They battled it out around the Maule River, and the Inca did not expand any further afterwards. But little did the people know that as they were fighting each other, an unstoppable bowling ball was hurtling towards them called Spain. Spain would conquer a huge amount of the Americas, taking Peru in 1533 and marching into Chile a few years later. However, Chile was no Peru, which is to say there was no gold or silver, so Spaniards still steadily settled it, just not so enthusiastically, with Pedro de Valdivia founding Santiago, the capital, in 1541. Chile's potential was in its central region, where the earth was rich and good for farming, but conflict with the Mapuche stalled and deterred the Spaniards more than anything. The Mapuche did not relish forced labor, and were not going to relinquish their land without a fight, and quite a bit of that occurred. The warrior leader Lautaro won several battles against the Spanish, and later Mapuche raids killed thousands of Spaniards and abducted many of their women, eventually leading to the 7 southern cities being abandoned. In short, they gave Spain a chilly reception. The country struggled on, isolated and ill thought of, costing more to maintain than it produced, and only being sent second-rate officials to govern it. In 1810, Chile declared independence from Spain, with a half-Irish, half-Basque general called Bernardo O'Higgins rising to prominence in the liberation movement, mustering Argentine support and defeating the Spanish forces on the battlefield. Chile's independence was attained in 1818, but the nation's political temperature remained tumultuous until José Joaquín Prieto took power in 1831. His conservative administration was dominated by Diego Portales, who was the one really in charge. What resulted was stability, economic growth, investment in railroads and education, but also resentment from the opposition, who tried several times to put liberals in power. Chile and Argentina won a war against Peru and Bolivia, and Chile also pushed south to gain total control of the land once and for all. Thousands of German immigrants were invited to colonize this area, and with characteristic German efficiency, they had it up and running and prospering in no time. Here we see the odd sight of a neo-Romanesque German church in front of a South American volcano. But Chile was also looking north, seizing a nitrate-rich slab of land from Bolivia. Both Bolivia and Peru declared war on Chile, and Chile beat them both in the War of the Pacific. Political divisions led to a short civil war. Modernization increased, border disputes with Argentina were solved peacefully, and celebrated with a statue of the Prince of Peace on the dividing line, the Christ of the Andes, in 1904. Meanwhile, socialism spread among the working class, fanned by the flames of neglected reforms. Politics got pretty rickety, governments popping up and vanishing like a live-action whack-a-mole. The Great Depression didn't help. Stronger ties with the US after World War II resulted in larger loans and investments, and some big reforms came with Eduardo Frei Montalva. But not big enough for the leftists, and his Marxist successor, Salvador Allende, had radical plans for his nation. Alas, some initial success soon ended, with food shortages, stagnating production, and strikes, several funded by the US, wary of incipient communist regimes. Still, health, housing, and education improved, but that all costs money. The so-called free lunches Allende provided for school children had to be paid for by someone, and the government was losing money fast. It ended in a military coup. Allende shot himself, and the right-wing general Augusto Pinochet became dictator, much to the delight of the CIA, who had supported him. Parliament was closed, unions were banned, and opponents disappeared, some deciding to take mysterious leaps into the Pacific from helicopters. Pinochet was every communist's nightmare, and many of them were killed, tortured, or exiled. By the 1980s, however, free market reforms saw economic growth. Pinochet lost the election to this guy, and since then, democratic Chile has become one of the richest and most peaceful nations in the Americas, with a very high Human Development Index. But how solid are the foundations of all this is a good question, especially given the massive 2019 protests over the rising cost of living and other things. The biggest event to shake Chile since the gigantic 2010 earthquake that left 1 million people plus without homes. What looms on the horizon for Chile? This scenic land of song, this land of poets, attracts many millions of tourists every year, yearning to glimpse the many natural wonders, from Atacama to Torres del Paine, not to mention the strange, distant Easter Island, whose curious story deserves its own video. So that's it for Chile, and that's all from me for now. Bye-bye!